For decades, Queen Elizabeth's private estates represented far more than land, wealth, or royal tradition. They were symbols of trust, continuity, and the future direction of the monarchy itself. But according to growing reports from royal commentators, one estate transfer following the late Queen's passing has triggered a wave of tension behind palace walls. Because what appeared to be a routine succession decision may have revealed something far more significant about Prince William's growing authority, Queen Camilla's influence, and the future balance of power inside the royal family. When most people hear about a royal estate changing hands, they assume it is little more than an administrative process. Documents are signed, legal formalities are completed, ownership changes, and life inside the monarchy continues as normal. It sounds straightforward, predictable, and frankly not all that interesting. But according to many royal commentators, the situation surrounding one of Queen Elizabeth II's most closely associated private estates may have been anything but routine. In fact, some observers believe the transfer revealed far more than a simple inheritance. They argue it exposed deeper questions about trust, influence, and who is quietly shaping the monarchy's future behind the scenes. And that is where the story begins. Following Queen Elizabeth's passing, attention naturally focused on King Charles and the enormous constitutional transition taking place across the institution. Public discussions centered on the new monarch, the future role of Queen Camilla, and how the royal family would adapt to a new era after more than 70 years under Elizabeth's leadership. Yet while much of the public remained focused on those larger headlines, another development was unfolding more quietly. Prince William was assuming responsibility for assets, responsibilities, and positions that many observers viewed as crucial to the monarchy's next chapter. On paper, this appeared entirely expected. William is the heir to the throne. He represents the future of the institution. And over time, greater responsibilities were always going to move in his direction. But according to royal commentators, one particular transfer attracted unusual attention. Not because of its financial value, not because of its size, but because of what it symbolized. For years, royal historians have pointed out that certain estates connected to Queen Elizabeth carried importance that extended far beyond property ownership. These locations represented continuity, legacy, and the long-term stability of the crown. They were deeply connected to Elizabeth's vision of the monarchy and, according to some observers, reflected the people she trusted most to protect that vision in the future. That is why the transfer immediately sparked discussion. Because if Queen Elizabeth spent decades carefully preparing the institution for the future, then every major succession decision inevitably raises questions. Who was being trusted? Who was being empowered? And who was not? Those questions quickly began circulating among royal analysts, particularly because reports suggested that the transition occurred with remarkable efficiency. By the time discussions reached wider royal circles, the process was reportedly already complete. There was no prolonged public debate, no visible negotiation, no dramatic announcement designed to explain the significance of the decision. Just quiet execution. And according to many commentators, that silence may have been one of the most revealing details of all. Because inside royal institutions, silence can sometimes communicate more than public statements ever could. When leaders choose not to explain themselves, observers naturally begin looking for meaning elsewhere. Why was there no detailed explanation? Why was there no reassurance? Why did everything appear to move so quickly? Those questions only fueled further speculation. And that speculation soon began focusing on another key figure, Queen Camilla. According to reports discussed by palace commentators, members of Camilla's wider circle were caught off guard by the speed and finality of the transfer. Whether those reports are entirely accurate remains a matter of debate, but what is undeniable is that the story quickly evolved beyond the estate itself. The conversation became about influence. Because within institutions like the monarchy, influence rarely depends solely on titles. It often depends on access to information, access to decision-makers, access to conversations taking place behind closed doors. And whenever power begins shifting from one generation to another, questions about access inevitably follow. Many observers began wondering whether this transfer represented more than a legal event. Could it also represent a political one? Could it signal that Prince William was beginning to exercise greater control over areas of royal life that had previously operated differently? And if so, what might that mean for those who had spent years building their position around the existing structure? Those questions became increasingly difficult to ignore. Meanwhile, supporters of William offered a very different interpretation. They argued that what critics described as consolidation of influence was simply responsible leadership. From their perspective, the future king was doing exactly what many people expect him to do: protecting important assets, strengthening institutional continuity, and preparing the monarchy for the challenges ahead. Viewed through that lens, the estate transfer was not controversial at all. It was necessary, it was logical, and perhaps even inevitable. Yet the existence of two competing narratives only made the story more fascinating. On one side stood those who viewed the transfer as evidence of a carefully planned transition designed to secure the monarchy's future. On the other stood those who wondered whether it reflected a broader restructuring of influence taking place behind palace walls. And the deeper commentators dug into the story, the more one question continued emerging. Was Prince William simply inheriting responsibility? Or was he quietly reshaping the institution in ways that many people had not yet fully recognized? Because if observers are correct, the estate itself may have been only the first visible sign of a much larger transformation already underway. And as reports continued circulating, attention soon shifted toward the reaction inside royal circles, where concerns about influence, access, and the future balance of power were reportedly becoming impossible to ignore. The reaction inside royal circles is where many commentators believe the story became far more revealing than the estate transfer itself. Because while legal ownership may have been settled quickly, the political and symbolic consequences were only beginning to emerge. And according to those who follow palace dynamics closely, it was the response behind the scenes, not the transfer, that started raising difficult questions about influence, access, and the monarchy's future direction. At first, the discussion remained relatively contained. Royal estates change hands, responsibilities evolve, new generations gradually assume greater authority. None of that is unusual. What attracted attention, however, was the growing perception that this particular transition felt different. Observers repeatedly pointed to the same detail: silence. There were no lengthy explanations from Kensington Palace, no carefully orchestrated media campaign, no visible effort to reassure those who reportedly felt unsettled by the decision. Instead, William appeared content to let the transfer speak for itself, and that silence quickly became a story of its own. Because in royal politics, silence rarely remains empty for long. It becomes filled with interpretation. Some commentators viewed William's approach as a sign of confidence. They argued that future leaders should not feel obligated to justify every decision, particularly when those decisions involve responsibilities already expected to pass through the line of succession. Others saw something more strategic. They suggested the silence may have been designed to avoid creating unnecessary debate while allowing a broader transition of authority to continue uninterrupted. Whatever the motivation, the effect was undeniable. Questions multiplied, and many of those questions centered on Queen Camilla's wider circle. According to reports discussed by royal commentators, concern reportedly began spreading among individuals who had spent years operating within networks closely connected to Camilla's position inside the royal family. Again, the issue was not necessarily the estate itself. It was what the transfer might represent. Because institutions are often shaped by relationships as much as by formal titles, people develop connections, they build trust, they establish influence through years of proximity to decision-makers. And whenever power begins shifting toward a new generation, those informal structures can suddenly feel far less certain. That uncertainty became a recurring theme in commentaries surrounding the story. Many observers began suggesting that the real anxiety had less to do with property and more to do with access. Access to conversations, access to influence, access to the people shaping future decisions. Those concerns may or may not have been justified, but they quickly became part of the narrative. And that narrative only gained momentum as additional reports emerged. Several commentators pointed to what they described as a broader shift taking place behind palace walls. Rather than relying heavily on informal relationships and long-established networks, they argued that William appeared increasingly focused on creating clearer structures around authority and decision-making. That interpretation fascinated royal watchers, because if accurate, it would represent a meaningful change in how influence operates within the institution. Traditionally, royal power has often flowed through personal relationships, trusted advisors, and informal channels developed over many years. A more structured system would look very different. It would rely less on familiarity, less on personal history, and more on formal roles, procedures, and clearly defined responsibilities. For supporters of William, that possibility sounded entirely reasonable. After all, many modern organizations function precisely that way. Strong institutions rely on systems rather than personalities. They depend on structures that remain effective regardless of who happens to hold influence at a particular moment. Viewed through that lens, the estate transfer became symbolic of something much larger. Not simply succession, modernization. Yet critics and skeptics offered a different perspective. Some questioned whether the changes being discussed represented efficiency or consolidation. Others wondered whether long-standing relationships were being pushed aside too quickly in favor of a more tightly controlled approach to governance. Those debates intensified as commentators continued examining the broader implications. And perhaps that is why the story refused to fade. Because every new discussion seemed to return to the same central question. What kind of monarchy is Prince William preparing to inherit? More importantly, what kind of monarchy is he preparing to build? That question became increasingly difficult to ignore, especially as observers began noting reports of growing tension between different royal households. Publicly, everything remained composed and professional, exactly as the royal family would prefer. Appearances continued, engagements proceeded, official duties were carried out without interruption. But beneath that polished exterior, commentators believed a deeper realignment might already be underway. One centered not on personalities, but on power, not on titles, but on influence, not on today's monarchy, but on tomorrow's. And according to many royal analysts, the estate transfer may have been one of the first visible signs of that transformation. Yet the deeper they examined the situation, the more attention shifted toward William himself. Because if this truly was part of a broader restructuring of authority, then the most important question was no longer what had happened. It was why. And the answer may reveal more about Prince William's future reign than any public speech ever could. What makes Prince William's reported approach so fascinating to many royal commentators is that it appears fundamentally different from the way royal influence has traditionally been exercised. Throughout much of modern royal history, power inside the institution has often depended on relationships, personal trust, and long-established networks built over decades. Titles mattered, of course, but access frequently mattered just as much. The people who could enter certain conversations, speak to key decision-makers, and maintain proximity to the center of royal life often possessed influence that extended far beyond anything written in an official job description. According to many observers, that may be exactly what makes the story so significant. Because if reports from palace commentators are accurate, William does not appear interested in preserving every aspect of that traditional system. Instead, he increasingly seems focused on creating a structure that relies more heavily on clearly defined responsibilities and less on informal influence. And that possibility has generated enormous discussion. Supporters view it as modernization. Critics sometimes view it as consolidation. Either way, very few people seem to dispute that change is occurring. The question is what that change ultimately means. For years, William has been presented as a future monarch determined to streamline the institution. Royal experts frequently point to his preference for efficiency, discipline, and long-term planning. Unlike previous generations, which often operated through larger networks of advisors and extended royal relationships, William's reported vision appears considerably leaner. That distinction matters, because whenever institutions become leaner, access inevitably becomes more limited. And whenever access becomes more limited, people who previously enjoyed influence often begin feeling uncertain about their future role. Many commentators believe that dynamic may help explain the growing anxiety reportedly emerging from circles connected to Queen Camilla. Again, the issue is not necessarily any single decision. It is the pattern. One decision may be explained away. Two decisions may be coincidence, but when multiple developments begin moving in the same direction, observers naturally start looking for a larger explanation. And according to many analysts, that larger explanation increasingly points toward William's vision for the monarchy's future. A monarchy with clearer boundaries, a monarchy with tighter control over influence, a monarchy less dependent on informal relationships. Whether that vision ultimately proves successful remains to be seen, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. At the same time, another factor continues shaping the narrative: public perception. Because one of William's greatest advantages throughout this entire period has been his ability to avoid direct confrontation. Commentators repeatedly point out that he has not engaged in public disputes. He has not issued inflammatory statements. He has not publicly criticized anyone connected to the controversy. Instead, he has largely maintained the same image he has cultivated for years. Calm, disciplined, focused on duty. That consistency has made it difficult for critics to frame the situation as a personal feud. And according to some observers, that may be entirely intentional. After all, William grew up watching how public battles damage the royal family. He witnessed firsthand how conflicts can dominate headlines, divide public opinion, and weaken institutional credibility. Those experiences appear to have shaped his approach to leadership. Rather than arguing publicly, he often allows actions to communicate his position. Rather than escalating tension through statements, he lets decisions speak for themselves. And in situations like this, that strategy can be remarkably effective, because it forces attention away from personalities and back toward structures, back toward systems, back toward long-term institutional questions. Yet despite William's composure, reports suggest the situation has not been entirely comfortable for everyone involved. Many commentators have noted that King Charles reportedly occupies a particularly difficult position within the broader narrative. As monarch, he remains the head of the institution. As a husband, however, he cannot completely ignore concerns emerging from Queen Camilla's side of the family. That creates a delicate balancing act. Intervening too aggressively could create visible division. Remaining completely uninvolved could be interpreted as acceptance of the changes taking place. Neither option is particularly attractive, and according to observers, that reality may explain why Charles has appeared cautious throughout much of the discussion. The challenge facing him is not simply political. It is personal, because every institutional transition eventually becomes a family transition as well. That truth is easy to overlook when discussing royal strategy, succession planning, and constitutional responsibilities. Yet behind every decision are relationships that have developed over decades. And that is where the story becomes even more layered. Because beneath debates about estates, influence, and future leadership lies a deeper historical context that many commentators believe cannot be ignored. The relationship between William and Camilla has always existed alongside one of the most emotionally charged chapters in modern royal history: the legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales. Royal analysts frequently caution against oversimplifying that connection, but they also acknowledge that history shapes people. Experiences leave impressions. Family dynamics do not simply disappear because time passes. Some commentators believe William has successfully separated personal history from institutional responsibility. Others wonder whether traces of those experiences inevitably influence how he views certain situations. The truth may never be fully known. What is clear, however, is that discussions about the estate transfer have increasingly evolved into discussions about William himself, his judgment, his priorities, his leadership style, and perhaps most importantly, the kind of king he intends to become. Because as more observers examine the pattern of decisions reportedly emerging from Kensington Palace, a growing number are reaching the same conclusion. The estate transfer may never have been the main story. The real story may be the glimpse it provides into a future monarchy already beginning to take shape behind palace walls. And according to many royal commentators, the developments that followed would only strengthen that perception as tensions reportedly continued growing and the long-term consequences of William's approach became increasingly difficult for anyone inside the institution to ignore. What made the situation even more complicated, according to many royal commentators, was that the estate transfer was no longer being viewed as an isolated event. As weeks passed, Observers began connecting it to a much larger pattern of decisions that appeared to point in the same direction. One decision by itself might be explained as routine succession. Several decisions moving toward the same outcome, however, naturally invited different kind of scrutiny. And that scrutiny increasingly focused on how Prince William seemed to be redefining influence inside the monarchy. For decades, much of the royal family's internal structure operated through relationships that had been built over years, sometimes even generations. People knew who to contact. Trusted advisors developed close ties with specific households. Informal channels often existed alongside official ones, creating a complex network of influence that outsiders rarely saw but insiders understood very well. According to commentators, that system may now be facing its biggest challenge in years, because the future king appears increasingly interested in creating something different. Not necessarily a larger monarchy, not necessarily a more powerful monarchy, but a more disciplined monarchy. A monarchy where influence flows through clearly defined responsibilities rather than personal proximity. And that distinction may explain why the estate transfer generated such strong reactions. Many observers believe the debate was never really about land, wealth, or inheritance. It was about what happens when old networks discover that the rules are changing. That realization reportedly created growing discomfort among those who had become accustomed to operating within the previous structure. Not because anyone was publicly excluded, not because dramatic confrontations were taking place, but because uncertainty itself can be powerful. When people are unsure whether their influence will continue, every change feels significant. Every unanswered question feels important. Every decision becomes part of a larger narrative. And according to palace commentators, that narrative increasingly pointed toward William's vision for the future. What made the situation particularly fascinating was William's refusal to engage publicly. In today's world, public figures often respond immediately to speculation. Statements are released, interviews are given, clarifications are offered. Yet throughout the discussion surrounding the estate, William reportedly maintained the same approach he has used during many previous controversies. Silence. Not defensive silence, not uncomfortable silence, deliberate silence. For supporters, that approach reflected confidence. For critics, it appeared calculated. Either way, it proved remarkably effective, because without public statements to dissect, attention remained focused on actions rather than rhetoric. And the actions themselves seemed to communicate a consistent message. The future king intends to govern on his own terms. That perception gained even more momentum as commentators turned their attention toward King Charles. Because if William represented the future, Charles remained the present. And according to many observers, that created an extraordinarily delicate situation inside the monarchy. The king reportedly found himself positioned between competing pressures. On one side stood the need to maintain family unity. On the other stood the practical reality that succession is already underway. Not constitutional succession, institutional succession, the gradual transfer of influence that occurs long before a crown formally changes hands. Royal historians often point out that this process happens in every reign. Future monarchs begin assuming greater responsibility years before they inherit the throne. Their priorities become increasingly important. Their advisors gain influence. Their vision begins shaping decisions. The difference in this case, commentators argue, is how visible the transition has become. Many observers believe the estate transfer provided a rare glimpse into that process, not through speeches, not through official announcements, but through consequences. Because once influence begins shifting, everyone inside the institution feels it. Some welcome it, others resist it, and many simply try to adapt. That reality may explain why discussions surrounding Queen Camilla became increasingly emotional. For years, Camilla worked to establish her place within the royal family. Her journey was neither simple nor universally accepted. She faced enormous public scrutiny, endured years of criticism, and gradually rebuilt her image through persistence and discipline. Even many critics acknowledge that reality, which is why some commentators have expressed sympathy for the difficult position she reportedly found herself in. Not because she was directly involved in every aspect of the controversy, but because the broader shift seemed to affect people connected to her world more than anyone else. And that created a perception problem. Whenever one group appears to lose influence while another gains it, observers naturally start looking for explanations. Is it strategic? Is it personal? Is it institutional? Or is it some combination of all three? Those questions have fueled endless debate among royal analysts. Some argue that William is simply carrying out necessary reforms. Others believe old family tensions may still influence perceptions on all sides. The truth is likely far more complicated than either explanation alone, because institutions are rarely shaped by a single factor. They're shaped by history, by relationships, by personalities, by strategic calculations, and by events unfolding over time. Yet despite all the speculation, one conclusion continued appearing in commentary after commentary. William showed no indication of changing course. The future king appeared willing to tolerate discomfort, willing to tolerate criticism, and willing to allow uncertainty to linger if it meant continuing the direction he believed the monarchy needed to take. That determination fascinated royal observers because it revealed something important about leadership. Some leaders seek consensus above all else. Others seek control. Still others seek transformation. And according to many commentators, William increasingly appears focused on long-term institutional transformation, even when that transformation creates short-term tension. Which raises perhaps the most important question of all. If the estate transfer was only one part of a larger restructuring effort, what does that reveal about the monarchy William intends to build once he eventually becomes king? Because as public debate intensified and palace relationships reportedly grew more strained, the focus gradually shifted away from the estate itself and towards something much bigger, the future balance of power inside the British monarchy, and the role Catherine, Princess of Wales, may ultimately play in that future. As the story continued unfolding, many royal commentators began reaching the same conclusion. The estate itself was never the real story. The land mattered, the legal transfer mattered, the symbolism mattered, but what truly captured attention was what the entire episode appeared to reveal about the future balance of power inside the monarchy. Because by this stage, the discussion had evolved into something much larger than inheritance. It had become a debate about leadership, influence, and the kind of institution Prince William intends to build when he eventually becomes king. That is why Catherine, Princess of Wales, increasingly entered the conversation. Interestingly, Catherine was not directly involved in the reported tensions surrounding the estate. Yet many commentators argued that her presence remained central to understanding the broader significance of what was happening. Whenever discussions turn toward the future of the monarchy, William and Catherine are inevitably viewed as a partnership rather than as separate figures. The future king, the future queen, the next generation, and according to many observers, that future generation appears increasingly focused on structure, stability, and long-term institutional planning. Throughout recent years, Catherine has built a public reputation remarkably similar to the one Queen Elizabeth maintained for decades. Discipline, consistency, professionalism, a refusal to become distracted by daily controversy. Those qualities have helped make her one of the most trusted figures in the royal family, which is why many royal analysts believe the estate's story resonated so strongly. Because whether people supported William's reported actions or questioned them, the broader narrative seemed to point toward a monarchy that is gradually reorganizing itself around William and Catherine's vision for the future. A monarchy that relies less on informal influence. A monarchy that places greater emphasis on clearly defined responsibilities. A monarchy preparing for generational transition. Supporters view that as necessary modernization. Critics sometimes view it as an overly rigid restructuring. But regardless of perspective, few deny that change appears to be underway. And change always creates winners and losers. That reality may explain why emotions reportedly ran so high among those connected to Queen Camilla's wider circle. For years, relationships, access, and proximity to key decision-makers formed an important part of royal life. If those dynamics are evolving, uncertainty becomes unavoidable. Some adapt, some resist, some simply find themselves caught between two eras. And according to many commentators, that may be exactly what happened here. The estate transfer became symbolic of a broader transition already taking place behind palace walls. Not a sudden revolution, not an open confrontation, but a gradual shift in where influence resides. A shift from the present toward the future. A shift from Charles's reign toward William's eventual reign. And perhaps that is why the story continues generating discussion long after the original reports emerged. Because beneath the speculation, beneath the palace intrigue, and beneath the debates surrounding succession lies a much larger question. What kind of king will Prince William become? The answer remains incomplete. No future monarch reveals everything about their leadership style years before ascending the throne. Yet moments like these offer clues. They reveal priorities. They reveal instincts. They reveal how leaders respond when faced with competing pressures. And many royal commentators believe this episode revealed a future king who is comfortable making difficult decisions, willing to tolerate criticism, and determined to shape the institution according to a long-term vision rather than short-term political convenience. Whether that vision ultimately strengthens the monarchy remains to be seen. But according to observers, one thing already appears clear. The center of gravity inside the royal family is gradually shifting, not through dramatic announcements, not through public declarations, but through decisions, through responsibilities, through control over assets, influence, and institutional direction. And as that shift continues, the consequences will likely extend far beyond any single estate transfer. Because this story was never really about property. It was about power, not power in the dramatic sense often portrayed by headlines, but the quieter form of power that determines who shapes the future, who defines priorities, and who ultimately decides what the monarchy becomes in the next generation. And if recent developments are any indication, Prince William is already answering those questions one decision at a time. What do you think about this reported palace power shift? Do you see Prince William's actions as responsible leadership and preparation for the future? Or do you believe the changes are creating unnecessary tension inside the royal family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this debate continues, dividing royal watchers around the world. If you enjoyed today's analysis, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest coverage of Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, King Charles, Queen Camilla, and the stories shaping the future of the British monarchy. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.